Unfortunately, the video that I originally took for the 2019 1 release notes did not record any audio, so I'm just going to redo them quickly. There aren't actually too many new features here, um, but we'll just go over the list here. The first one is actually something that we had targeted for 2019 2. We managed to slip it into 2019.1.1, which, oops, I loaded the wrong unit here, which all the projects that are going to run on 2019 1 are going to run on 0.1.1 just due to an issue that we had resolved with runtime licensing. So what you're going to notice as Unity starts up here is in the bottom right corner, I'm actually running off of a temporary Unity license, and we finally have warnings when the temporary license is going to expire. So you see that at the bottom there. It says my license is going to expire in 17 days. Once it's a month to expiration, anytime that you load an application, it's going to check against its licensing features, and if it's within that month, it's going to give you a warning every time you load that application. We have updated the Unity 2018.3. All the bells and whistles that are along with that you can read on Unity site. VR support is now in the template project, so in the past, all the VR projects that we've done have been in project-specific code only. We've now formally introduced that to the project here. If you open up the content window, that's under Window, VE Studio Content. We'll bring up this window here at the bottom. You'll see a new drop-down, desktop and VR, and all that does is it swaps out these two scenes. This contains all of the VE information that's not specifically related to the content, so like navigation and all the systems that drive the scenes, drive the content behind the scenes. The process for creating VR projects is very, very similar to your normal desktop projects. You're still going to use the FM. You're still going to go through your normal content addition. The only major differences are, of course, the controllers. You can't fly in the scene, so you have to be careful about what gets shown and where, as well as some performance implications due to having to draw the scene twice, one for each eye. But other than that, the process should be more or less the same. Live lesson authoring palette changes. What we had a request where after you've done a live lesson authoring recording, as you're recording those, the nodes are coming in on the left side, and if you do a drag and drop from the recording tab into the canvas, and you undo by pressing Control Z, it performs the undo in the canvas, but it doesn't perform it in the palette itself. So you essentially delete the node, and then you can't grab it out of the palette since we moved it. Ideally, we'd like this undo to work across the entire tool, but it's quite a bit of work to make that happen. So for the meantime, what we've done is when you drag a node out of the recording tab into the canvas, rather than moving it, it just copies it. So if you end up undoing it within the canvas, you delete it, no big deal, you can just grab it again from the recording tab. Merge utility support for older file schemas. This is something that I talked about quite a bit last year. We were trying to find a good non-invasive time to apply this change. We finally pulled the trigger over the holiday break. This is going to not really have any noticeable impact right away. What it essentially allows it to do is, if you have a project that's running from 2016 or something like that, the database schema is completely different. You don't necessarily want to update the database to the modern version just to perform a diff or a merge. So this is setting the framework to allow the merge utility to use an older version of the merge utility that corresponds to that database's schema when the database was created. Right now, we only have one version of the database, so it's always just using that same version. But it's setting that groundwork for us to be able to add new versions of that in the future and not change existing saved database files. Now the big change that we have here is adding VE Studio behaviors to Unity game objects. So I'm going to walk through the workflow that we think we're going to use here. So I'm going to grab my FM tree window and just add a couple of objects. Let me bring up the FM UI as well. It's a little bit easier to see the changes. We're a little bit more used to the FM UI than the FM tree. So we have our blank project here. What I'm going to do is add an FM object sibling. We're going to add the right engine. You see the license expiration came up again for the database from opening the FM UI. Okay, so I have the right engine. Let's grab the geometry in the scene, and then we'll use Unity Link to just link that object. And then we just need to process it down in the content window. So let's go to the FM, refresh. There's my right engine, new fidelity object. It has a component in the DCC object applied. Normally, if we wanted to apply a behavior at this point, we come into here, add a new behavior, add the alias, and then content process back in Unity. What we've done here, let me close this tree out, is there's this new behaviors tab where I can go into Window, VE Studio, Behaviors, and it opens up this window here. We have a couple of options. First is it'll auto content process as soon as you add a behavior. You can turn that off. You just have to remember to come into content and then hit content process for the component that you've changed. And then the parent, by default, it's just going to stick it at the root, which is this base level. You can also put it at the hierarchy parent. If it does have a tagged object in its hierarchy, it'll just pull it to the parent. Or a specific object, you can drag in an indexer from the FM tree here to make that its parent. For now, I'm just going to leave it at the root. It actually doesn't matter in this case because we're just going to add a behavior to it. So here's a list of behaviors. It's populated from the database and the aliases. Normally, we're going to add aliases. So right now, this guy has the FM object info, the DCC object ID, basically all the scripts from creating the object. Now we just want to add an LRU to it. So we'll click that, and it's automatically content processing because that's checked. And this now has the LRU script on top of it. If we come back to the editor here, refresh, now it has the LRU behavior. So it's another shortcut to adding properties or behaviors. You can do it directly through Unity now. In addition, we can grab the left engine here, if I can grab it. This is not tagged as an object at all. It doesn't have any behaviors on it. There's no geometry. This is where this parent field comes in. I'm just going to add an LRU directly to the geometry itself. It's going to content process. We'll tab over, refresh. So in this one click, I've now created a fidelity object. It's taking the unique ID from the object that I had. It's applying the component. It's adding a DCC object. It added the behaviors. This is very, very fast to create objects and tag them. Obviously, since I have the parent set as the root, everything gets thrown into this layer. So you kind of have to perform some hierarchy changes to organize it. Or else you can take advantage of the hierarchy parent or specific object to set the parent. This whole thing was sort of put together to help ease adoption for end customers. This model first workflow that we've talked about quite a bit. Customers want to be able to come in, throw their models into the scene, apply some behaviors onto some parts of them, and hit play and have it all up and running as quickly as possible. So you can see, I mean, this is extremely fast to get this up and running. I think this is going to be a pretty huge game changer for not only our existing and new customers, but even internally getting things set up in the scene and added to the database. So let's come back to the release. Let's make sure I didn't miss anything. Fair support, 2018.3, palette changes. Yep. So that's basically the set of features that are in 2019.1. Of course, there's the full feature list if you want to take a look at every issue and bug. There are a couple additional project steps just because the merge utility changed so much. We just need to reinstall that. It's being installed to a different path. And then because the project was updated to 2018.3, there's just a couple settings that need to be changed here. And that's about it. See you guys next time.